and I'm delighted to say now, moving on, joining me for the first time ever on the We Are West Ham podcast, professional colleague, friend of mine, all-round good guy, friend, and definitely in the know among the great and good of Tottenham Hotspur is talkSPORT early breakfast presenter and just Mr. Tottenham, I think it's fair to say. It's Paul Coyte. Paul, absolutely brilliant to see you again. Very
Cheers,
uncomfortable being this side of the mic. I'm used to jousting with you over the mics on talkSPORT with you in the presenter's hot seat. Very nervous indeed.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing, isn't it, really? And I love it. Thanks very much for the intro, though. Just so too many West Ham fans aren't hating on me right now. It's like, oh, no, look, it's a Spurs guy. He's got the thing in the background as well. So thank you very much. Yeah, I'm one of the nice ones. Is that what it is?
Yeah,
is that
absolutely,
what you're saying?
Absolutely. I mean, we've spoken about this before, haven't we? It's the sort of rivalry between West Ham and Tottenham. It's quite hard to be too angry about it, given that about 30% of my friends, having grown up in Essex, all support Tottenham and are Tottenham through and through. It's not like you can take it to the extremes, because I'd have very few friends left.
Well, yeah, it's the same with me, because I grew up in Essex, and obviously it was probably about 5 years before you were at school there, Will. So it was, and it was the same thing. And this is going back to like when I was a small kid in the late 70s and then the early 80s and everything. Always been that. At the time, it was West Ham fans. There were probably more West Ham than anything else. This is around Harold Wood in Romford. So mainly West Ham, and then Spurs. Not so many Arsenal, quite a few Liverpool, because Liverpool were good before they were bad, before they were good again. So that was it. So yeah, and for years, I would have this just hanging over me, this whole West Ham thing. Then I moved away, and it had gone. And then I had a newfound love for West Ham because nobody was giving me a hard time. And then I moved Then I moved back to Essex again, and I'm in Buckhurst Hill, and there's loads of West Ham fans. And then it all came back to roost again. It was like I was like being back 9 or 10. And then whenever we'd play, I'd be dreading the game, whereas before I'd always liked West Ham. But I'll tell you, have a word with your fans. Thanks very much.
I must admit, every time I used to have a word with you before, I find it a lot harder than you do when West Ham win over Tottenham. And, you know, in recent times, there's been a split, I would say, certainly since I've got to know you a little bit. And I find it a lot harder than you do not to gloat. You're like, you're just a nicer bloke than me, I think, Paul.
That's what it is. Yeah, Will. You've realised exactly what sort of man you are. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't feel the need to rub it in people's faces and all that sort of thing. And I can't help it. I know it comes back to bite me later on, which it always does, but I just cannot help it at all. But you don't find that, do you? You find it easy to just take it as it is and remain quite objective and pragmatic.
There was a football team that my son played for, and there's a few, really staunch West Ham. I mean, we're talking really staunch. The stuff where you'd get the kids' WhatsApp group, and then it'll be all this anti-Spurs stuff would appear. They'd never say anything when you see them, and they knew what I do for a living. And then I'd be like, oh, I mean, that's a bit strong. So the thing is, what was it? I think when we won, and there was the Sunday, and they'd been there, and I think when we won the game, and I'd gone in and said nothing, and I'd get more enjoyment from saying nothing, because the thing is, there's two ways of dealing with it. If you start giving me a really hard time about West Ham winning, and I'll go, you know what, Will, you're right, you were better. Yeah, better on the day. What can I say?
That's
and then
worse.
And all you're left is, yeah, well, there you go. There's nothing else to do.
Why don't you buy it?
Exactly. Come on, bite. You go, no, you're right. It was really inwardly, you're going, oh my God, just take it. Come on, you can see this through. So this is how I was. So when we won, and it was like, I just, well, how are you? Yeah, fine. Nothing, no mention of it at all. And I think, oh, come on, at least mention it, at least say something. Whereas I would always say something, or it's like the elephant in the room. So before they come marching over, give with a finger point, I go, oh, yeah, you deserved that. Yeah, it was good. And go through the whole game very quickly before they can say anything. And they go, it's like taken away. So, exactly. I've got a lot of years of knowing how to deal with those days.
Absolutely, wind out the sails before you've got a chance to go anywhere. Well, look, Paul, it's brilliant to have a chat with you on the podcast for the first time. Talk about Tottenham. Obviously, you're one of your great love. Of course, you've been involved with the club for years and years and years now. You've seen the progression through different generations of players, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Just like a lot of our listeners, West Ham fans listen to this podcast. Just talk about this season, first of all, before we get into some of the macro stuff, it's a bit of a bizarre situation. I think among West Ham fans, it's considered we've had a good start to the season. People looking at Tottenham, I know football can be so roller coaster, but looking at Tottenham saying, oh, it's been a nightmare. When's Nuno going to go? Blah, blah, blah. 8 games in, you're 5th, we're 7th, and it's all sort of Harry Kane scoring again, and it's all flipped on its head, isn't it?
The thing is, we're very good at looking back on managers that have gone. And looking at the bright times and going, oh, yeah. I mean, it happened 10, 15 years ago with Martin Jol. And when Martin Jol had gone, everybody go, oh, yeah, but look at Martin. We love Martin. And, but at the end of Martin Jol, it wasn't good. And it's the same as Pochettino. Of course, we loved Mauricio Pochettino for obvious reasons. We were in the Champions League final. But more importantly, it wasn't so much that for me, is that it just put a new excitement, a new confidence, and we just felt as if we were going to games and winning with style, and we played that pressing football, and it was very Spursy. Well, naturally Spurs-esque, I should say, not Spursy, but it was, and it just worked for us. And then when things started to go downhill, it was heartbreaking. It was absolutely heartbreaking. So whoever who was going to come in after Pochettino would be on a hiding to nothing. And of course, Mourinho, we know what happened there, and that never worked out. And now it's the same with Nuno, and people are just very underwhelmed, or were. The fact, he's come from Wolves, and has he won anything? And is he just another Mourinho? And is we just going to be playing bad football and worrying too much about it? The first 3 games we won, we didn't have many shots on goal.
Weren't they? Yeah.
They were, yeah, very much so. And then it didn't. Then we looked really bad, and then we were awful at Arsenal. But again, and I try and liken this to the Pochettino era, because I remember speaking to players when Poch took over that were saying, "Look, it's not," and it wasn't. It took a time for us to gel and for it to work for a new style of football, and they got it used to what he wanted to do. And I remember them saying, when Poch took over, saying, look, it's going to take time. I think it was Carl Walker. I remember speaking to Carl Walker about it. And saying, it's not happening yet, but it's just taken us a while to try and get used to what he wants us to do. And I assume that that's what's happening with Nuno at the moment. And you've got to give managers a chance. You've got to do it. There's no point panicking and think, PSG have lost. There's a chance that, we'll be able to get him back. Let's stick with what we've got and let's see how it works out. It's too early yet, I think.
Do you think, Paul, you're not to liken Pochettino to Ferguson, obviously a slightly different scale, and he wasn't there as long, but do you think there is that element where for a period of time, Tottenham fans are just going to be a little, not outwardly negative, but a little bit unwilling to fall in love again, sort of as hard as they did with Poch, and almost the rose-tinted spectacles looking back? Because interested on your take on this, Paul. That Champions League run, for me, I know it was some of the greatest moments of my Tottenham fans' lives, those last-minute dramatic wins, blah, blah, blah. But that seemed, from a sort of a fairly neutral perspective, looking at Tottenham at the time, the Champions League run seemed to mask some pretty dire league form.
100%. Absolutely on the money you are. And this is... And it happened before then. Sorry, Will. You're absolutely right. I agree with you. I absolutely agree. Because at the time, we were not good. And however great Ajax was in Amsterdam, which is any Spurs fan will tell you, it was the greatest moment because it was so unexpected. It's like any game. If you're losing 2 and then all of a sudden you come back towards the end. But when there's so much to play for and it's a Champions League final, of course, it was everything. But it was fortunate. It was fortunate that we got the chances and we managed to get through and we got those goals. It wasn't done the fact that we played amazingly, because we didn't, and it was at the end. And it's the same as the Man City. We had a bit of fortune that went with us as well. So it did mask over the cracks. It did paper over those without doubt. So by the time we got to Madrid, we all knew that this wasn't the Spurs that we'd had maybe the year before that, for that last season at White Hart Lane, which is when Spurs were really on fire. But then things did seem to go against us. There was the move to Wembley was one thing. Didn't buy any players, which turned out to be a mistake. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. When there was the talk about Pochettino saying, the uncomfortable rebuild or whatever words that he used, when maybe we should have actually bolstered the squad a little bit and it went stale. There's a lot of things to look back at. In hindsight, it's very easy to be able to look back, that's where it went wrong. That's where it went wrong. But there were clues. There certainly were clues. So as good as it got, for me was probably that last season at White Hart Lane. And I think if we'd stayed there, we would have had a hell of a chance to win the league. I really, really do. I think if ever we were going to do it, it would have been that next season. But Spursy, you see, then we move over and move to Wembley.
Well, look, Paul, you've done my link for me there, because my next question was going to be about the stadium. Another thing West Ham and Tottenham fans have in common at the moment, obviously differences in the situations, of course, is being sort of moved away from, and again, to different levels. West Ham fans, a lot of them feel they've been moved away from their spiritual home. That's manifested itself in different ways since, has been well publicised. The Tottenham situation is a strange one, because I think many West Ham fans would look at that and say, if we were to not play at Upton Park anymore, you're on the same site, the stadium. I still haven't been to the stadium. I don't know how I've managed to swerve that, but the stadium is a brilliant arena by all accounts, and it all boils down to what you want from your football experience as a fan, I think. And more so these days, people want a bit more comfort. I used to sit in the chicken run at West Ham, where you had to choose between getting a coffee or going for a wee at half time. There was you couldn't do both.
I thought you did do both there. I thought it's how it used to work.
Coffee down.
There was the streams that used to go down. Hey, what is that, coffee or is that piss? I'm not really sure.
It did used to taste like it, to be fair. But and what you've been there. So for those who don't know who's listening, Paul's been the sort of halftime interviewer, entertainer, good friend, and colleague of the great and the good of Tottenham Hotspur. I think it's fair to say, Paul, you consider a lot of the famous names of Tottenham fans sort of friends of yours, and often on your talkSPORT shows and all that sort of thing. But you've been working at the stadium for every home game for you fill in the gap for me there, Paul. How many
16
years?
16 years.
16 years. So you've seen that period, haven't you? As well as obviously going to games yourself as a punter beforehand. As far as the stadium goes, it was a bit more of a long, drawn-out process, because you had to go to Wembley, and then the Spurs. Now there are West Ham fans who sort of think that there's a little bit of what West Ham means to them that has gone and will never be replaced. I think I'm one of those. It comes out in less angry ways, but
I can understand that.
What's your thoughts? And being there, when asked about it, how do you sort of sum it up, the good, the bad, and the indifferent of that whole process, if you can?
Personally, the stadium is unbelievable. It is, and I'm not just saying it from a Spurs perspective. It's an incredible stadium. Everybody would agree. You got to come, Will. You love it. I mean, it is an amazing space, and I miss White Hart Lane because I'm an old Spurs fan, and there's a lot of us that have got a lot of history there, obviously, and seen so much. And there was just something about the old ground. But you know, if I could choose, you've got to go with the future, and this is an incredible place. I remember before the stadium opened, we had a day where there were plenty of fans were invited to come in for the first time. I remember the first time I ever went into White Hart Lane. You probably remember the first time you went into Upton Park, didn't you? And it was went in there, and then
Steve Potts' testimonial.
It was what? Whose was it?
Steve Potts' testimonial.
Oh, was it? But what was it like for you then when you walked in, and then you saw the pitch and everything? Was it, almost like an incredible moment that you'll always remember for the rest of your life?
You can pinpoint in my mind right now, seeing the green walking up the stairs in the East End. Yeah, for sure.
And you think that's it. And that's how it was for me at White Hart Lane. And it happened again when the new stadium was built, because I think the biggest worry, obviously there was the worry that it wouldn't be on that site. But the fact that it is, just moved along to a little bit. It does make a difference. And when I walked out there, it completely took my breath away. And I stood watching people. So when we invited, a few hundred people to come along, it was great because everybody, there was a nervousness of people walking out to go out and go, what's it going to be like? Is it going to feel like home? And it did feel like it. And it's a weird thing to try and explain, because it felt like it was the same place. I know it sounds, it is the same place. It is effectively the same place. But if you look around you, the only thing that's consistent with what you can see is the sky. So it could be anywhere. But it did feel like it was White Hart Lane. It was very, very cleverly done. And it's very tight. This is the thing that most people also don't expect, is from the size of the stadium. When you actually get in there, it's very compact. And that's what makes all the noise, and also the amazing South Stand as well. So, it is an incredible stadium. And also, and it's a football stadium. And I know this is the problem that you've had. is the fact that it's not built for football. But then again, I think Spurs probably took lessons from the London Stadium to think, well, you know, what is missing from that? I mean, is there, because I know there's talk about things are going to change. Does it feel more at home to you than it did before? I mean, it's going to take time. Of course it's going to take time. But eventually it will be right.
There have been improvements by the club, Paul, and that's the thing. You know, there's such a vicious atmosphere. Sometimes, not at the moment. To be fair, there's still a sort of core of people who have got that feeling. But you've seen it. There was 7,000 to 9,000 people march through the street. I've never seen a football protest with that many numbers. A couple of seasons ago against the board, that's all mixed in with that. That will be their legacy, regardless of what happens. Even if West Ham win the Champions League and the Premier League in the next 5 years. Their legacy will still be the ones that won the Champions League and moved us away from Upton Park to the London Stadium. That's never going away.
So is there no part of fans that actually think, I can see why we did this? This was, you know, at the time, this seemed like the right move to make.
I think there are, Paul. I think you'll know, especially working in the industry you've always worked in, you'll know a lot of the time the dissenting voices are always the louder ones. People saying, I quite like this. That doesn't make headlines. People going, oh, this is enjoyable. Well, what a nice place to come watch football.
Yeah.
No one gives that any.
Nobody's going to tweet, I'm having quite a nice time. You know,
exactly
right.
that. Yeah, you're spot on. No one's going to ring in a radio show, all of those things. So from my perspective, just talking personally, I find, well, this is what I've got now. The stadium has been improved. It's better than it was when we walked in for the first the sort of curtain raiser against Juventus. It has improved on there, and I think the club intend to keep doing that, which is all you can ask for, really. I think there is some positive feeling, but and again, I've always said it all along, that there was sort of an implicit deal between the club and the fans, was that we'll move, you take away from your spiritual home, where and let's get it straight, no one had a say in that. There wasn't a say. But in return for that, to move you to this stadium, you will have a better football team than you're used to historically. That hadn't happened for the last 5 years, which is why we saw the level of anger we've seen. I was always of the opinion, well, as soon as we're getting the bit back in the deal that was struck implicitly, where the football team's better and you feel like the club is operating at a higher level than it always used to, i.e. not on the back of a fag packet and the training ground being a little bit whatever, then no problem. This season and last season is exactly what we're getting. So I don't mind. I'll just make the best of it. I still go to football with my dad like I always used to.
Right.
There are differences there. But we've made our own new routine. We've finally, after a couple of moves, got seats we like, with people around us we like, atmosphere we like. There was going to be some teething problems, but the idea of watching West Ham in the way I do now for the next 10 years is not one that sort of bothers me or rankles with me as much as it did before. And that's a combination of improvements to the stadium and the main one, improvements to the team, because that was the deal. People just felt wronged before because the team was still rubbish, if not worse, than it was at the old ground.
But do you think, though, that the improvements to the team and the fact that, you know, you are looking so much better, and, you know, obviously the manager's working and you're looking like a very good football team, of course, but is there any luck rather than judgment, do you think, that's gone into that? Or is it's actually the plan that's worked?
I think David Moyes is the core of all of it. I think there was some luck with that, in that I think he was employed at first, as in for the second time, because he was a cheap option. We'd just been paying Manuel Pellegrini in the region of £8 million a year. I'm not certain on these figures, but I believe Moyes' first contract when he came back the second time was less than half of that. So that played a huge part in the decision. Let's not get it wrong. I think it's worked out very pleasantly indeed for the decision makers, but they obviously saw something in Moyes as well. There's such a hesitancy among West Ham supporters to give any credit at all to the board, because it's bad PR. But I think that's the wrong way to approach it at all, because that waters down any sort of negative points you have to make then when they need making, if you're just negative all the time. So I think credit's got to be given there, and he's done a fantastic job.
I agree. And when it comes to the board, and it's, you know, I'm not defending the West Ham board, and I'm not doing the same with Spurs either. But at the time, you would imagine that Pellegrini, fair enough, seemed like a pretty impressive appointment that he was being brought in.
Yeah,
and it's
massively.
the same with Spurs and Mourinho and even going back to other managers that we've brought in the past. This seemed to have been, at the time, the best option. They're paying the most money they can, and they did it because they believed it was going to work. And when it didn't work, is it the board's fault? And then obviously Pellegrini's gone, because when things aren't working well, then you think, well, you're paying this guy all this money, it's not working, and then the team's not very good. But at the time when the decision's made, it seemed like that was going to be the best one, and most people would go along with it and go, yeah, absolutely. But being fans, it's very easy for us to be able to go straight away. I always knew this wasn't going to work. We got to get rid of him because we're the ones that always shout the loudest to get rid of a manager. So then when David Moyes has come in, it could have been the slightly underwhelmed, but also he's come
inspiring, yeah.
But for him, and it's almost the difference. If you think of when he went in for Ferguson, he's seen both sides of the coin here, because when he came into Manchester United, he was on a hide into nothing. He was never going to be able to follow Alex Ferguson. It was never going to work for him. Whereas going into West Ham, he's got the other side of it, because Pellegrini's been a disaster. It can only go one way. And so he's thinking, look, I know the team. I've been there before. I know what I can do. So it must have been more of a comfortable fit for him to go in there at that time than what happened when he left Everton in the first place.
People weren't queuing up to give him a job either, Paul.
Yeah,
let's be honest. It was a fit for both parties at the time. I genuinely think, I think he took too challenging a job before with Sunderland and Sociedad after United.
Yeah.
And that sort of did probably self-inflicted damage to his reputation. There must have been a sort of middling club that wasn't such a huge. You look at where, Sunderland and Sociedad, going to Spain's a big thing to do. I think he just was desperate to prove that he is a special talent after it went so wrong at Man United. So he almost made the challenge too big. And West Ham was finally his level. I think he probably realised that, Jesus, I need to get in and stay relevant here.
Yeah, and
there was a risk, Paul, of him dropping off.
Of course there was.
And all of a sudden, it's like, I've only got championship jobs coming in. And you've seen it with plenty of managers, the Kirbishleys of the world, who had decent reputations. After a couple of wrong moves and a bit of hesitancy getting back in the game, they sort of fall away. But, I just think what he's doing at the moment is fantastic. There's a brilliant feeling around the club.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
And it feels, for the first time ever, Paul, sustainable. 2006, we got to the cup final, was great. Last season, Upton Park, brilliant. But it feels sustainable, which is what I've always wanted for such a long time.
I'm just really hopeful. I'm just really hopeful that it's when you're rubbish and you play your one good game of the season or the two good games of the season against Spurs, and then you turn it on. I'm hoping it's going to work reverse. So you're playing really well, and then you play against us, and then it turns out that you'll be rubbish now. So I'm hoping it works both ways.
Role reversal, mate. Exactly right. To Paul, just to talk about Tottenham then. The way it started this season, you've mentioned what your sort of thoughts are on Nuno. Back into fifth, the game at Newcastle yesterday, pretty comfortable performance.
Yeah, I thought so.
All the way through. The Harry Kane situation, it's dominated the headlines. It still dominates the narrative around Tottenham, understandably so, because the move to City that never materialised in the summer. Harry Kane came out and put a statement out, which is sort of against his character, isn't it? Which obviously basically confirmed that there was talks and there was a desire to leave this summer. He struggled to find his shooting boots until the Newcastle game, of course. What do you make of that situation?
Oh God, where do we start? It's interesting because the lines get really blurred between what's rumor and what's made up, and what actually did happen. So I can understand Harry Kane thinking, okay, it's great under Pochettino. I'm going to sign a 4-year deal for however long it was. And this is where I want to be, because he's a Spurs man. It's as simple as that. But when things turn for the worse and feels that, hold on now, I'm getting slightly older, I'm 27, 28 years old. Is this going to be the right place for me to stick around to actually win stuff? I'm actually loath to go into the fact of saying, yeah, he definitely said he wanted to go. Yes, Manchester City wanted, because was there any offer? Was there actually, I mean, you probably know better than me. Was there actually an official offer that came in for Harry Kane saying, right, we're going to offer you this much? Whereas Grealish has gone for 100. Harry Kane's got to be worth a lot more than that. And as a Spurs fan, I've heard people on telly, it would have been best. It would have been the best interest of the club for him to go, not at the wrong price. I don't think it would have been. I think it would have been crazy. I mean, if someone comes in for Declan Rice now at a small amount, and you know how much he's worth, he's worth about 250 mil, something like that, isn't it, Will? You're not going to take it. You go, we would rather have him in our side than take the money and then just try and get some people to build it around him, even if he's, we're not sure whether he wants to stay. And if he's on a long-term contract.
Isn't that the crux of it? And that's the baffling thing with modern football these days. In any other walk of life, we've done this analogy before on air, but if it was a car and you've got a decent car and you want to sell it for $5,000 or whatever, and someone comes and offers you 3.5, you're not going to sell it. But your car isn't then going to say, well, actually, I'm not going to run quite as well now. You haven't let me go. And that's the balance, isn't it? Because it's a human commodity. But I'm not
convinced. And also because it is, and also because it depends on the human commodity as well. And you've got to weigh up what sort of player you're dealing with. There's going to be players that you think, you know what? I mean, I look back on Gareth Bale when he left for the first time. And there was, I think they were in Hong Kong and he didn't want to come out. And he was advised, if you're going to get the move, you're going to have to sit tight. Don't go out to training. Don't do this. And then you get forced into the move. And whether it be great of Harry Kane or whether it be the Spurs board looking at it and thinking we know what sort of fella Harry is, so we can trust him, why should you? Because I don't believe that Harry Kane is the sort of player, even now, that's going to go out and force that move, because he's got too much respect for Spurs fans and probably too much respect for the game itself to start throwing his toys out the pram saying, well, I'm not going to do anything unless I move, because he signed the contract in the first place and he stood by that.
Yeah, I totally understand you there. And Kane is obviously a professional in that sense, but it's impossible to argue that his form has suffered again. All the evidence suggests it's as a direct result. You have to sort of do some mental gymnastics, don't you?
But that's it. You're sort of thinking of the form. How is he looking? That's what it is. It's obviously
it's
because
a bit of a coincidence,
he didn't get a move. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's off the back of the Euros. Maybe it's because he didn't have a long enough summer. Maybe he doesn't look like a man who's shrugging his shoulders too much, but also he needs, like we said, in the Euros. And I'd always said, give him the ball and he'll score. And last couple of games, by the way, does it show that I love Harry Kane? Harry. But I thought he was terrific against Newcastle, and that was it. And he was getting the ball, he was getting into positions, and the goal he scored was fantastic. And that's Harry Kane. And it's, and don't count him out. Don't count him out. Because he'll be up there and he'll start scoring goals again. And then we'll look at things at the end of the season. Nothing's going to happen in January. He's not going to go in January. I don't believe that.
I say, you reckon he'll be there that long?
I do. Yeah, I do. He won't be gone then. Because then, when do you reassess it? Where, if you've got 3 years left on a contract, what's the point? Is his worth going to go down in a year? Don't think so. And not all of a sudden he's going to be like, okay, he's 28, but is it going to be, this guy's no good anymore, we're never going to bid for him again? I don't think so. So I'm happy for him. Whether we see how things go at the end of the year, who knows? Who knows?
It does feel. I know it's easy to get sort of lulled in. It does feel like a when rather than an if at this stage. But it all depends on if if Nuno turns it around and you end up competing for that top
swap
four.
deal with Antonio. What do you think? Is that possibly on the cards?
No. You're right. Thanks.
Kane, no. You don't want him. You're gonna keep him. Okay.
Kane can't play right midfield, right back, left back, and in goal, can he?
Yeah. He has played in goal for Spurs, and he didn't go so well. Yeah, so that's fair enough.
Paul, looking ahead then to the game on Sunday, huge game.
Yep.
For both clubs, both sets of fans, for various different reasons, but of course, whatever the circumstances are, West Ham v Tottenham, huge game, one that I always look forward to, the one I look out for first on the fixtures every single season. I can't wait for it. Sunday, 2:00 at London Stadium. How do you think that game's going to play out? Because Tottenham sort of hit a bit of form yesterday, albeit against Newcastle. Who aren't much cop, but how do you see the game playing out? West Ham getting a decent win at Goodison Park on the same day, both going into it in reasonable form.
If it had been a couple of weeks ago, then I'd really be worried about the whole thing. But I'm slightly buoyed by the way they played on Sunday against Newcastle. I think we're turning in the right direction now, and I think we're going to beat you, Will. I'm never gonna call you the next day or start like, but I have a feeling that we may win this game. Now, obviously, this is one of those games where, you're going to be nervous, whatever goes on, because it's one of those uncomfortable games where you sit there and you can't enjoy it because, please, whatever, don't let us get beat. You think you're going to win? That's no, isn't it?
No, I'm the same as you though. I was at the North London Derby a few weeks ago where I was working. I mean, Arsenal.
That was horrible.
But I haven't seen Arsenal play like that for years. The whole Emirates was unlike I'd ever seen it before. From before the game, everything was working in unison, and you're just sitting there going, "This is what Arsenal could be." So I think there was a little bit of Tottenham being poor, a little bit of Arsenal being good, a little bit of the atmosphere and the occasion overwhelming the Spurs players, and all of a sudden it was a calamity. That obviously, in my opinion, wasn't going to be the case for the rest of the season. Watched the game yesterday, Tottenham. Again, it's hard because it's Newcastle, but you've got to beat what's in front of you, and it doesn't matter who the opponent is. That'll have given Kane a bit of confidence. He loves a goal against West Ham as well. I'll be honest, and I don't normally say this, as well as West Ham are playing, if you offered me a draw now, I'd say, yep, thank you, shake hands and walk away. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Same as what you said.
I'd probably be the same.
Yeah, I don't want it to be, we're playing well as it is anyway. Just take the draw and get out of there, I think.
I think the most important thing is that you just want your team to turn up. If you get beat or if it's a draw or whatever, you just want your team to turn up. Arsenal, we never turn up. I've seen that too many times in the past. I've seen times where we look totally up for it, and and most people with any clubs, you know what your team's going to do within the first 10 minutes of the game. You know, you get unless you're a Newcastle fan, I suppose, in the first 5 minutes of the game when they played us. And they're thinking, hang on, it's all coming back. And Decker jumping up and down there with the Saudis. And then within about 15 minutes, it's like, can we put the camera on them again? Can we just see that? They didn't, because it just went against everything that they wanted to happen on the telly. But that's it. It's just as long as we turn up, as long as we give you a good game. And that's what. And I also want a really good game. I like a real. We've seen some great games over the years. One of my favourites was that. Obviously, that wouldn't be for you was the 3-2 and the Paul Stalteri and talking about last minute winners, and when we were talking about that's what we love.
That always seems to happen, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like we've had Lanzini in our favour, the Lanzini stuff. Gareth Bale scored a couple of screamers at Upton Park from a million miles away. We had the Ravel Morrison game at White Hart Lane. There does seem to, and then thrown in there every now and then there'll just be a horribly grim 1-0 to someone. Like the goal in the first 5 minutes is usually in February when it's grey and miserable.
And
no one remembers it.
The game at Wembley, that it was League Cup game, wasn't it? We
what
2 up,
a game
we 3 up. I mean, what a game for you. I remember sitting there thinking, this is easy. You were just abject. It was just like worst West Ham performance I've ever seen. And then the second half, it's like, what is going on? And that's the thing about football with momentum. When you see that momentum, it's great when it's with you, but when it's against you and you think, oh, no, I know what's going to happen. You could see it happening. I mean, it was for a neutral or a West Ham fan, it was a fantastic game. For us, it was just horrendous. But, give us something like that. I mean, let's say we're going to spin the wheel and it's going to be one of those games, but you don't know where the ball's going to drop, whether it's going to be in West Ham or it's going to be Spurs. Are you going to take it?
I don't know. If someone said, right, there's going to be 6 goals in the game.
Someone's going to win.
Where it's going to go. Or you can have a 0-0. I think at the moment, I just don't think my heart can take it, Paul.
You're not going to take the 0-0.
I think I would. I just need to be on a bit more of an even keel in my life these days. I just don't think my heart can take it anymore. But look, so good. Paul, it's been absolutely brilliant having you on the podcast for the first time.
It's a pleasure.
Wonderful as ever. Give me a score prediction then for Sunday, 2:00, London Stadium, West Ham v Tottenham.
West Ham 0, Spurs 6. I think I'll go with the
6-goal thriller.
I reckon. You know what? I'm going to go for 2-2. I will go for. I mean, I did say that I think it's going. I will, and I'm not sitting on the fence. I think it's going to be a few goals. I think we'll go for 2-2 or a 3-2 win for Spurs. One of those two.
Excellent. Excellent stuff. Well, look, we'll have the predictions from the lads on the podcast as well later in the show. Paul Coyte from talkSPORT there, Mr. Tottenham Hotspur, and generally one of the nicest men I've come across in my career. Paul, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been absolutely brilliant having you on. And yeah, of course, if West Ham win, expect a video call from me the morning after the game.
Yeah, I'll go, okay. I'll go, yeah, well, it was good and well done and congratulations. And then you'll go,
Exactly that.
Thanks, dummy again.
Paul